Hello and welcome to Breaking Ground on iPropertyRadio with myself, Katie Tallon, the show where we chat to industry experts to get a view on what's happening on the ground and to learn about new trends emerging within the construction industry. This show was brought to you in partnership with Place Engage, a data-driven platform for more successful public consultation and community engagement for your next development project. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by John Richardson, lead geospatial consultant with Murphy Geospatial. John, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Carol. I'm glad to be here.
Well, first, let's start. We have featured Murphy Geospatial on the show previously, and it is something that we've touched on, but maybe not to any great detail. And I'd love to get into maybe some greater detail with you today. So we might just start by explaining geospatial consultant. What does that mean, and what does your day job look like?
Right. Well, our clients would be within the construction sector, the development sector, county councils, consulting engineers, anyone who is needing to build something, whether that's a factory, an office block, a new road, railway line. They all need geospatial data in order to look at the feasibility of what they're trying to do and also to do the design of what they're trying.
And when you say geospatial data, what exactly are we looking at, and how does this differ from what we would know as a traditional survey?
In the past, it's generally been a map, basically in the past, a 2D map with contours showing roads, and the engineers the designers would use that to design the best way to construct the road, the most efficient and economical way of constructing the road. So they need good, accurate geospatial data or a good, accurate map to do that.
But then talk us through some of the data points that obviously we've seen such an increase in technology across the built environment. What kind of data are we able to get from that now that maybe we didn't have 25 years ago?
Well, 25 years ago, you would had to have surveyed all the detail manually. So you would have had a total station or a theodolite, as people would have thought, and the surveyor and the assistant would have literally needed to pick up each point of detail, whether it's the corner of a manhole or the edge of the road or center line of the road, using the total station. Whereas now, with the invention of 3D laser scanning, originally that was static scanning, so it was set up by a scanner at the side of the road, and they would scan a 360 scan, which creates a point cloud. And then the points of detail can then be extracted from that point cloud to create a 3D map or 3D model. So things have moved on with new technology, and now we can do the 3D laser scanning in a mobile environment, so vehicle mounted or track mounted, or we can do from UAV, which are drones, and we can scan from that. So it creates a much more complete picture. It's a mass capture model. So instead of just having the point of detail that the surveyor had to go and pick up in the field, you have a complete picture of the built environment or the natural environment in that area.
Very good. And then, so in terms of surveys, how frequently are these done? So say, for example, we're looking at a project, you're working with a property developer on a large scale residential project. What's the frequency at which you're surveying this particular site?
Well, generally, we would carry out a topographical survey initially prior to planning in order to provide the developer with the 3D map or the 3D model of the site so he could develop his planning permission and design of what was going to go onto the site, whether that was going to be a factory or a residential development.
When you're looking at the 3D model of the site, does that then incorporate, we talk a lot on the show and we speak to experts who are really pushing the boundaries of BIM technologies and other digital design. And one of the I won't say challenges, but I know maybe some of the opportunities have been about being able to integrate those. So in terms of the emergence of design technologies for the actual building. Can you integrate well with those?
Yes, so we would do on a typical development, you'd have a topographical survey of the ground, which is basically levels and detail across the site. If there was any existing buildings on the site, these would be scanned and a Revit model could be created of that. And also the underground utilities would be surveyed, would be traced and scanned and then mapped into the model. So you'd have a 3D model of what was above the ground and a 3D model of what was below the ground.
So from a safety point of view on site, I presume this is a huge improvement to back in the day. I've been in this industry long enough to remember when roads and sites and communities got shut down when underground utilities were hit in error. So, obviously there's been huge progress made from a safety and convenience side there. But what are the driving, I suppose, the driving benefits for people? Where are we in terms of best practice? When I speak to technology experts, I'm always conscious that actually it's not the entire industry that's embracing best practice. And it's always interesting to see where Ireland is in terms of digital adoption. So when you're looking at the construction and infrastructure sector in Ireland, how far are we towards embracing technologies that are available?
Well, in recent years, we've definitely moved more towards the 3D modeling, the Revit modeling of both the above ground information and the below ground information. Certainly on the below ground information, it started off with just a live markup of where they could detect services, but that's moved on now, and we now use ground penetrating radar to provide a picture of what is beneath the surface and combine different techniques in order to be able to map and model those. And the fact that we can bring those into one model along with the above ground information means that the client, the designer, has a much more complete picture of what is there.
John, how long have you been with Murphy Geospatial?
I've been here 12 years with Murphy's. Yeah.
Very good.
Murphy Geospatial. Yeah.
Yeah, because actually the Murphy Geospatial is a relatively new brand that actually is it in the last, just from memory, would it be the last 2 or 3 years or more that Murphy's rebranded to Murphy Geospatial?
Yeah, we were Murphy Surveys Limited prior to that, and then just after COVID, we rebranded to Murphy Geospatial.
And is that indicative of the direction that the industry is going, or is the company, are you taking an approach towards actually developing new technologies and as opposed to using and deploying new technologies?
Well, it was the fact that we were no longer just doing surveys, and when people asked, "Oh, what do you do?" then half an hour later you finished explaining all the different aspects of measuring the built environment. So we felt geospatial was much more applicable to what we actually carried out, in the fact that it wasn't just doing surveys, doing maps, but we do a lot of monitoring of projects, so structural monitoring. So there's lots of different aspects to the built environment which we were bringing to the table. So we felt that we needed to encompass that more.
Well, you might just explain the structural monitoring. I haven't come across that before.
Well, if a project is, if there's a large construction site, say in an urban area, then you may be asked to monitor the buildings around that development to see if anything is moving, and that's on a continuous basis. So some of that can be automated. So we set up systems which will constantly monitor the targets within the zone of influence 24/7. And if there's any movement, it automatically sets off alarms and sends messages to the team so they can check that on site. It could be on a railway line if they were, say, directional drilling beneath the railway for a pipeline, then you obviously need to monitor the railway whilst that is happening. So.
Oh, okay, and tell me what is actually driving adoption here, and what's driving the progress of technology? Is it complying with regulations? Is it trying to achieve best practice, or what are the benefits there?
Well, I think the best practice is providing the geospatial information in the quickest and most accurate and most reliable way. The whole point is a project manager needs to be able to trust the information he's getting. And in a timely manner.
Okay.
So it's all about building trust and the reliability of the information.
Right, but in terms of trusting the data, I think that we've moved from not having enough data to maybe having more data than we know how to manage. And, certainly the last 2 to 3 years of the digital adoption flow across construction, not just in Ireland, but globally, has really been about how to use the data, how to draw insights from it, how to actually make that feed into better, faster, more efficient projects. Are we at that stage? Is that happening? Do people, like project managers on the ground, do they understand how to use your data for maximum impact?
Well, certainly the collection of data and the mass collection of data now with laser scanning, with UAV, you have a huge amount of data to handle, and that brings its own challenges. But it's extracting the correct information from that data, and that's where we come in. It's much easier to capture the data, but it's about managing that data efficiently and being able to provide the client with the information he needs from that data in a timely manner, and not just bombard him with a huge amount of geospatial data that he doesn't necessarily need.
When you're approaching new projects, kind of at a pre-construction stage, and you're speaking to project owners and going through the tender process, what's the level of understanding out there as to the need for good geospatial data?
Well, I think that's improving and has improved an awful lot over the last number of years. The consultant engineers are very aware of what can be achieved and what can't be achieved. So they're definitely up to speed on what the requirements of their project are.
Uh, um,
Sorry, carry on.
no, go ahead.
What we provide is the advice on the best methodology to achieve that data and to achieve the solution that they're looking at and looking for.
What is most misunderstood by the industry in this? Before we started recording, I mentioned to you that I had undertaken my first module in GIS in the geography department of the University of Galway last year. Found it very complex, coming from a legal background where we might have been checking title of traditional file plan folios. It was a very different approach. And it made me realize that actually so many people in the industry would be coming from that, dare I say, old-fashioned or more traditional approach. What do you find when you're meeting people and trying to, I suppose, raise the awareness, educate people, and talk about the continuing evolution of these technologies? What is most misunderstood?
I would say accuracies. In the past, we the client always wants the data to be right, and with any survey, you deal with tolerances. So it's, what does the client need? Does the client need his data accurate to plus or minus 5 millimeters, or accurate to plus or minus 10 or 15 millimeters? And nailing down exactly what the client requires defines which methodology can be applied to that. And that really drives what, the survey and what the deliverable is going to be.
You talked about the evolution of surveys over the past decades, touching on, going from 2D maps to the 3D laser scanners, bringing in the UAVs and drone technology. And now there's something new. So Murphy Geospatial has introduced GeoDrive. You might just talk us through that offering and the technologies that underpin it.
Yes, so GeoDrive is a vehicle-mounted laser scanning and imaging system. And we use this for capturing long linear features such as roads, railway lines. And we've done a number of projects where we've mounted the scanner on engineering trains in order to scan the track whilst the train is moving. And that gives us imagery and point cloud along the track for asset capture or for mapping. And then on roads, we have it mounted on a vehicle and we drive the road. We can do up to 100 kilometers in a day. And we capture 360-degree imagery and point cloud for that. Now, we spoke there earlier about huge amounts of data. And that is one thing with GeoDrive, that it generates a large amount of data, but we present that data in a portal in the cloud so that the client can look at individual locations along, say, 50 kilometers of road and only analyze the point cloud for that part of the road, that where he's not dealing with huge data files, that it's much more manageable managing through the portal.
Based on that amount of data, I can see how a project owner would select what they need for their particular project. But you're also going through the process if you can collect the data along up to 100 kilometers per day. Is there a bank being built up here that so that you're not going out doing for another project a similar location or a similar area? I mean, is there a strategic or a long-term vision as to, maybe building up a bank that could be accessible at some point?
Well, we're certain all the data that we capture is stored in the cloud and on hard drives. So it is being built up, and we would look in the future to be able to access that data for multiple projects. But obviously that is it's captured at that time. So if we were going to use it again in a couple of years, we'd have to make sure it was still applicable, that the road hadn't been resurfaced or the road hadn't been changed. But just having that information, is a huge benefit, especially for the likes of large infrastructure companies. If they're trying to manage their assets, we can have that information and map their assets very efficiently. Or if it's for road condition, we get very good imagery of the surface of the road, so we can map the condition of the road and provide road condition surveys, for large lengths very quickly.
John, who is availing of GeoDrive right now? Who's using it? As a public sector, private sector? What kind of projects?
A lot of public sector work, infrastructure such as road infrastructure, also utilities. The power grid. The fact that we're having to invest so much in the power network, that most cabling, utility cabling, will be going along existing roads, so that they're not impacting on landowners. So the capture of these roads on a topographical basis for long lengths is critical to their program. So it's ideal for that kind of environment where we need to capture long lengths of roads for cabling projects between substations, things like that.
So I suppose thank you so much for taking us through that, because this can be seemingly and it can be quite complex technologies for people who aren't used to dealing with it or aren't familiar with it. But it's really important for project owners, both in the public and private sector, to understand the new technologies that are emerging, how they can be used, and the applicability to projects. So before we finish up today, you might just maybe share your insights as to where you see the future technology and innovation, the future direction of that. What's next?
Well, I think the presenting of the data and the managing of the geospatial data is the most important aspect. We can capture that data, but it's getting that data over to the client in an efficient manner and the way the client can get the most out of his geospatial data. So certainly we see kind of portal delivery as being a big thing going forward, where the client can access his data in the cloud. He doesn't need specialist software in order to do that. And he can manage the access to his data through different stakeholders who can be given access to the portal. And then
yeah, no, please go ahead.
Yeah, and the portal is a way of managing that data, so that people wouldn't be changing the data on the portal. It would be there, and he could allow different stakeholders to get access to that data, to view the data, to download the data. But it's a way of managing that data, and as the amount of data has increased in the last number of years and will increase going forward, I think this way of managing the data is going to become much more important.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. And in terms of developing this kind of portal delivery, whether it's through a series of dashboards or otherwise, is that something maybe that's on the innovation agenda for Murphy Geospatial, or do you expect that will be something that will be fulfilled by maybe a third party integration with a third party?
Well, we have a Murphy Geospatial portal at the moment, which we put our surveys out on, which gives clients access to that information. But that's constantly under review and development to include more functionality going forward.
Yeah, we've spoken quite a bit over the last year about not just integrations, but also the importance of project owners having a tech stack. So it's not about one or two or three or four key pieces of technology. It could be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and integrating those into a lower number of platforms. They might not all integrate into one, but certainly you don't want 12. So integrations become very important. Right now, does your system, is it a standalone dashboard, or can you integrate with some of the existing technologies?
Well, we can link through to the likes of Revit. So clients can view Revit models for BIM through the portal. But it's a continuous development. So we're bringing new things in all the time. And like you said, there'll be collaboration with other portal providers going forward in order to provide the solution to the client on this. But we definitely see portal delivery as being managing the data as the best way to manage the data within the cloud. Yeah.
John, thank you so much. That gives us something to watch out for and to understand. And it also helps us maybe contextualize. We understand there's growing understanding about the types of data that can be collected, the importance of that data. We're extracting the insights to understand the benefits, but managing them, it's interesting to see that is still a challenge, and that's something maybe that will be the source of new innovation in 2024 and 2025. So it's always good to have, to watch for that. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. Best of luck with GeoDrive. I have seen the vehicles on the road on the M4 and the M6, so it's exciting to see. It's great when we see this technology out in the wild. So it's important for us to watch and learn about these new technologies and make sure that project owners understand what really is becoming best practice in their area. So thank you so much for your time and expertise today. That was John Richardson, lead geospatial consultant with Murphy Geospatial. My thanks to show producer Katie Tallon and to the production team at Hear Me Roar Media. Also thanks to Place Engage for making these conversations possible. And finally, thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of Breaking Ground. In the meantime, please be sure to check out all of the other Irish and international real estate and construction shows here on iProperty Radio.